This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call to order the October 5th, 2020 regular council meeting to order at 7 p.m. Are there any additions or before we do that, Susan, would you happen to have the American flag? We can open it with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to do that again. Okay, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Wait, let me get the flag there.
Okay. I pledge of allegiance
To the flag.
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I did it, but I was muted.
I appreciate your doing it. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
It does as well to me. Are there any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda?
I have none.
Yes?
Thanks.
There is one addition to the agenda. It was sent to you late today via email. It's also on the City of Vernonia website in the Google Drive. It's a staff report for a license agreement for Connex, and it would be new business B.
B.
E. E.
E, okay. Okay, anything else? Is there a motion to approve the agenda with the one addition?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda, Mayor, with the aforementioned addition.
Thank you, Councilor McNair. Is there a second?
This is Counselor Wagner. I have a question. What letter? E? E. Thank you. As in
Is there a
Edward.
second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Wagner. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Councilor McNair,
Aye.
Councilor Wagner,
Aye.
Councilor Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councilor Webb is absent. Motion carried.
Okay. There are no presentations tonight, Stephanie?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Then I'd like to move right into my mayor report, and I did open up my email this morning and was pleasantly surprised to find a press release from the Oregon Association of Municipal Recorders. And the press release, I'd like to read it to you. For immediate release, October 5th, 2020, Vernonia City Recorder Stephanie Borist is appointed as OAMR Region 1 Director. The Oregon Association of Municipal Recorders recently appointed Vernonia City Recorder Stephanie Borist as the OAMR Region 1 Director. Mrs. Borst will receive the oath of office to serve the 2020-22 term at an OAMR board meeting on Friday, November 13th, 2020. Mrs. Borst has been an active member of the OAMR since 2016. She has served on the conference committee at that time from 2016 to present. Education Committee 2019 to present, Special Projects and Fundraising Committee 2019 to present, and the Mentoring Community 2016 present. She received her certified designation in 2019 from the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. Mrs. Morse has been with the city of Vernonia since 2016. So congratulations, Stephanie. We're very proud of you, and it's a bit of positive news in this day and age, so way to go.
Thank you.
Outstanding.
Okay, and that's all I have for my mayor's report tonight. Are there any council committee meeting reports tonight?
I have none.
Okay. I don't have any. I do have a library committee meeting this Wednesday, so I'll be going to attending that. So, okay, are there any topics? Are there any
Mayor?
topics? Yes, go ahead, Councilor McNair.
Council, I might ask Councilor Allen a question. Has the Parks Committee been meeting? Is JR here?
I'm here.
Has the Parks Committee been meeting?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm waiting to hear from Stephanie Boris.
Oh, okay. I just was curious.
I
Hard to
see
get everybody.
Josette shaking her head no, so I don't believe they met yet.
They have
Oh,
not.
okay. All right.
Are there any topics from the floor tonight? No topics from the floor, okay? Consent agenda for acceptance. Consent agenda for approval. City council meeting minutes for September 21st, 2020. Any discussion on the council meeting minutes? Would anyone like to make a motion to accept the September 21st, 2020 meeting minutes?
This is Councilor Wagner. I move to accept the consent agenda for approval without changes.
Is there a second?
Councilor Allen will second.
Motion's been seconded. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Councilor McNair? Councilor McNair?
I keep having it on mute. Aye.
Councilor Wagner?
Aye.
Councilor Webb is absent. Mayor Hobart?
Aye.
Councilor Allen?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Moving to number 9, unfinished business, walnut tree at Spencer Park. Can be found on pages 4 to 9.
Okay, so I brought you guys this staff report. You can see the report from the New Day arborist. And so I put out inquiry to Gobi Walnut, which is a firm that buys walnut wood that's fallen on the ground. And I'm got them some measurements. I'm waiting to hear, but they will buy the large limb that fell. So that might offset some costs if you guys were to follow the New Day arborist recommendation of trimming the end weight. I asked him for a more specific prescription so that I could put it out to bid, and I haven't gotten that back from him. I wanted him to detail out more what he's exactly saying, like how many feet of the tips was he proposing we cut to remove the end weight, so that I could put out a bid that would get apples to apples with the few arborists that I do have cards for that I was going to request bids from. I don't have a price point for you guys to approve if you go the way of trimming the tree. He did say that we could reduce the risk to low if we were to have an arborist remove the end weight from the kind of the entire canopy. So pick a distance from the end of the tips and kind of clean it off that way. So once I get a prescription from him, if your guys' goal is to keep the tree, then I would be putting out bids, requesting bids from, well, you know, Maple Crest, and then the people who trimmed it, not in 2001, but in 2017, that did the kind of prescribed trim then. I'd get a bid from them also, and then find one other arborist to give us a bid. And perhaps New Day could, but typically the arborist that does the prescription doesn't also bid the cutting job, but sometimes they do. So kind of wanted to see what you guys thought of the report, and are we interested in lowering the risk rate and moving forward with getting bids?
I would like to see that, yes, but that is my personal thoughts on it. I'm concerned about leaving it just the way it is, so I certainly think we need to look at doing something.
Right. So I was thinking we could get the price for what they'll buy the limb for, and then get the bids with a more detailed prescription, and then come back to you guys on what the remaining cost would be and have you vote to either spend or not spend the low bid amount.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mayor Hobart, I'm all for saving the tree if all possible.
Okay.
Mayor Hobart,
Yes, go ahead, Councilor McNair.
with that assumed, the end goal is to hopefully be able to save it as opposed to taking it down. I think that would be the case, and with mindful of the fact that Councilor Webb was correct in his assessment that we don't waste a bunch of money on trying to trim it up and save it when we'd have to end up taking it down in the long run anyway. So I think that the proposal the city administrator makes leads us in that direction.
And, you know, I agree with everything that's been said, and after reading the recommendations from the arborist, I'm totally in agreement and moving forward in the path to try to save it. So.
Okay, so
Go ahead, Josette.
So with what I'm hearing from you guys, staff's going to move forward on getting detailed prescription and obtaining bids for cost approval at the next meeting? So we get the prescription, I'd get bids, and then I'd bring you the lowest bid amount, the lowest qualified bid amount to approve or not approve?
I would have to concur with that.
Is that the general consensus of the council?
That's my concern.
Okay. Stephanie, do you need a motion to, okay. So would anyone like to make a motion to direct the city administrator to proceed to obtain more information, and then upon that information, obtain 3 bids to do the necessary changes on it to save the tree? Is that a pretty good motion?
I didn't hear it.
Stated.
It got extremely garbled at the end, but I would be happy to move to request the city administrator get a prescription for the walnut tree under discussion, and after that, get bids.
Okay, would anyone like to make a second to that motion?
I would just add to that motion, if it's okay, that along with that, she gets an idea of what the value of the lens that will be removed, or the one that's setting down.
I amend my motion to add that she obtain the value of the downed limb and bring it back to council at our next meeting.
I'll second that.
Second's been made. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Allen,
Aye.
Counselor Webb is absent. Counselor McNair,
Aye.
Counselor Wagner,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you. Okay, moving right on to new business, staff report, cemetery update, and fee recommendations. Can be found on page 10 through 12.
Did you want me to run through that, Mayor Hobart, or do we just want to do questions?
Well, I take it everyone has had an opportunity to read through the recommendations and the new fees, and so I would, if everyone has read it, I think we could move right into questions. I'd like to lead off with a question I have for Ben. On the price of in the columbarium niches, the difference between the two upper tiers and the two lower tiers in the fees is $500, and was I reading that correct?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. I'm just that's quite a discrepancy. I kind of understand the thinking of people liking their memorial to be at more eye level and heart level. My concern is that once the lower niches are all sold and then the upper two levels are available for $500 more, it just seems, I don't know if it's correct. I did some research on where my mother was placed. Her ashes are placed in a columbarium in California, and 5 years ago, and they charged $3,000 for both my mom and dad to be together. So that was 5 years ago, and that included the engraving and everything. So I don't think the fees are too far off here in Vernonia, but that's about all I had to comment on that, or questions I had on that. And
yeah, I kind of struggled with that, and Josette and I had talked about that quite a bit. But that is, I mean, that's just kind of the industry standard. If you want to be up a little bit higher at that eye or heart level, there's a little bit of a premium for that. And also on the other side, giving a bit of a discount for not being you know, for the lower level niches.
Yeah.
So we could just go with one price for everything, but I think that we need to have some kind of separation between the two. Just my gut feeling, Mayor Hobart.
Sure. And I also found it interesting. I wasn't aware that the two new benches were also serving as a columbarium type for two niches in each one. I thought that was pretty cool. So.
Well, we had planned on putting benches in anyways, and then when I got to asking the stone company about it, it's only a few $100s more to have the bore holes in them. And so that's kind of something that cemeteries offer, is just kind of a premium offering. So, you know, it's not something that we're pricing to sell. And if they don't sell for 10 years, that's fine. They'll still serve as wonderful benches in the urn garden.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants something special and is willing to pay for it, then we have a really good opportunity for them, and generates quite a bit of revenue for the cemetery when that happens.
Yeah, I think they're pretty neat. Yeah. That's all the discussion I had.
So I'm not sure how to ask this question. Is there any concern that by pricing the lower two levels in the columbarium is going to have an appearance of diminishing the value of the people because they didn't have as much money, or they were, you know, they died later, so they have to, you know, just be stuck on the bottom? More so the cost issue. I'm trying to be a little bit sensitive to that. I'm not sure that maybe I'm not bringing something up that really isn't a thing, but it feels a little uncomfortable with saying the lower ones are, you know, are less expensive than the upper ones, or your upper ones are more expensive than the lower ones. I just want to know, was that thought of or discussed, or?
Well, you know, mausoleums and columbariums are just priced that way. You know, when you're at that heart and eye level, they're just worth more money. And for mausoleums that are 25 feet tall and have that top level, for casket interments, I mean, they're dirt cheap because they're way at the top, right? You gotta stand back a ways to see the name. And you can't, it's hard to get flowers up there, etc. I understand that, Councilor Wagner, but I don't think people are gonna look at it that way. I personally don't think, I don't think they're gonna look at it that way.
Mayor Hobart,
Go ahead, Councilor McNair.
if I might speak to Councilor Wagner's concerns, as the resident poor person on the council, proud of it. That thought never occurred to me. I don't mean that as a criticism. I just mean the reality is I never thought of it that way. I was more concerned with the price, I guess. Do you understand what I mean by that, Susan?
Yeah, I hear what you've said, and that's fine. It
Yeah.
was just something that,
I understand. I don't mean to be what I'm saying being disrespectful in any way. I just, my initial thoughts, I was like, ooh, I never thought of it.
Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead, Josette.
I think if we were in the 3,000 and 1,000 range, it might be a little more perceived that way. But since we're only $500 difference for the upper two levels from the lower two levels, it's still quite a bit of money if a person's going in the columbarium for a family. So it's more to be in one of the 24 spots or on that, does that make sense? Than it is really, they're all kind of elevated outside of the ground, which is the urn garden area.
yep, I appreciate the explanations. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? I take it these were just recommendations for us to review, and they will be put in the resolution, in the master fee for later.
It's in your ordinances later tonight.
Yeah.
And so that's why, I mean, if there's any other questions or, concerns, you can't see it in the master fee schedule resolution, but on this third page of the staff report, you can see the changes between what was there now, or what's there now, and what's being made. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has about anything on these changes or anything that I wrote in the staff report, and clear it up. I was kind of planning on talking to you guys now and bowing out. So if there was going to be any concerns when you guys started talking prices in the fee schedule, I'm more than happy to talk about them now.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
So with that, Mayor,
Yes.
Questions. So Ben and Josette, with the possibility of hiring a new city a cemetery caretaker in the spring, how do we work that pay enumeration issue with benefits, and can you outline that for us?
Say the last part of that again, Bruce. The pay enumeration for what?
For the caretaker, what all the package involves?
Oh, the package. Ben, can you speak to what's in the package?
And for the caretaker, I don't understand.
What's the cost? And what's involved in? Yeah, for the caretaker.
Well, it was a 16-hour a week job, and what did we scheduled? Was it 15? I believe 15 or 16,000 for the year. Or
did that include that 16,000? Was that just pay?
Yes, there's no benefits with that. It's a part-time job.
I thought there was a PERS benefit included in that.
There's a what benefit? A PERS?
Yeah.
No, so there's Medicare, FICA, retirement. Oh, yeah, retirement. So it comes to $22,800 at the end of it.
Okay.
for whatever work they'll do up there for the hours given that we put in the budget.
And our budget on that particular entity up there has basically been running between 20 and 30,000 a year. Well, 20,000 a year. With the hopefully with the columbarium, sometimes that's what drives the price on that. Do we have to include PERS? Are we required to?
So I believe we are, because they, even part-time, they fall under that. I know they don't get like vacation pay. We just give sick pay
Okay.
in a part-time. But last year it totaled us about 13,000. We added some hours because we wanted the upkeep to be at a next level, the committee and staff and the council. So the budget was approved for 22,891, all encompassing.
And we had no trouble with financing that, or
no. And really, the retirement's only going to be as much as it's based on it's a percentage of the wages you pay out. So all those numbers flux or lower or higher depending on how many hours. And with columbarium or urn placements are going to be way easier to kind of staff than a full casket burial. That's a little bit more work for the cemetery crew.
so we weren't as
okay. Go ahead.
well. The rest I probably can do, not trouble everybody with. I can speak to the staff about my concerns. So with that, I back to you, Mary.
What was the main, Bruce, if you don't mind, what was your main underlying concern there? Just so I know.
That our income would bear the burden of that, would bear the strain. I know what the budget is in that particular the cemetery has historically been in the $20,000 range income. So I'm just concerned about that. I have to look at all the stuff involved with it. I prepared to ask this question, really, probably. Sorry.
Well, and as we're fully aware, the full burial is going away. And we are now providing these other options. And we've talked about it in cemetery committee, but we want to start advertising in and outside of Vernonia a little bit that there are very nice options that are reasonably priced. We're talking about switching up the single soul for $1,750 in the urn garden. There is no better deal anywhere in the state of Oregon to put a soul in the ground in a cemetery, all fees included, for $1,750. We're offering some very nice products. We have a very nice columbarium now, and something that the cemetery committee has wanted to do once these things were instituted, and now we have prices set for them, is to do a little bit of advertising and try to let people know in the community and in communities surrounding that there's great options out here, and hopefully start to attract some more business for people to come and utilize our cemetery.
And with that, I agree with you completely there, Ben. I was just looking at the historical aspect of our budget, and I just don't want to be dipping into that money that we generated with the house sale too much to balance the budget there. So just being mindful of that. With that, I have one other question to ask. Your rules and regulations, have you guys been able to come up with something that's a workable product?
Well, we currently have adopted rules and regulations, but we're amending them, tweaking them to be match what we're doing now. Those are not done yet, right, Ben?
Right.
Okay, that was a question that I was asking,
Yeah.
which is okay.
Well, and here's the deal. When it was 2 pages listed 1 through 25. No, a bullet list of this. These are the quote unquote rules of the cemetery. When Josette and I kind of took over, well, we have found out, and every time we deal with the funeral home or a family, new things come up, and we've revised and kind of had to reinvent ourselves. And part of what I want to do is leave the next group of staff members with some detailed information on, and not just the overall rules and regulations, but some detailed procedures on how things work. We have put so much time and energy and figured so much stuff out, and I've been lucky enough to have a good friend who owns a cemetery to talk to when issues come up and how to figure things out. And I need to get these things into writing for the city, and in front of council for them to adopt, and for us to have a way forward, not just for 10 years from now, but 30, 40 years from now. Who's ever running the cemetery, who's ever in charge, has all of this information and has the institutional knowledge. It's extremely important to me personally that this information gets written down, and it's just taken a lot of work to make that happen. But it's important to me, and it's important to the cemetery.
Well, it's important to me too, Ben. I take a special interest in the cemetery, oddly enough. And I know that you're working hard to do that. I just wondered if you had an update on where you were at. I'll just keep
it's about 17 pages, Bruce, and I think it's about half done. So
okay,
that's an update.
That sounds like it's going to be pretty inclusive.
Well, I'm trying to hit every single situation that we dealt with, and like I said, it's a lot of bullet lists of procedures. Because a lot of things were done in the past, just like a lot of other things in old-timey Vernonia, a lot of handshake deals, and we understand how this works. And then 20, 30 years down the road, it doesn't work. And so I'm just trying to get all of that into writing so that somebody has a footprint, a guideline to follow, essentially. And they don't have to relearn all this stuff.
Well, again, my apologies. I didn't. All I would like to do is with the budget issue is try and hash out some of these things before we get into budget sessions and it does work a little bit easier. So that was my intent, and will continue to be. Thanks, Ben. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. You bet, Councilor McNair.
Any other questions for Ben? Recommendations? If not, I'd like to thank Ben for being with us tonight, and yeah, your last couple statements really kind of gave me a little different outlook on Ben and what you've been doing and the history of the cemetery and the financing. And I want to thank you for all the work you've done in the past and are currently doing, and you're doing a great job. So we all appreciate it. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Mayor.
So we're going to move on to B in the new business, La Cabana OLCC liquor license application.
So this was put in the packet by me at the request of Chief. It needs to come before council for approval or denial because they've been closed for a while. They had to reapply for their OLCC license. Just here for you guys to either approve, make a motion to approve, or deny.
I do have a little background. Since Chief's on vacation, he sent me a text message to give you guys some background on this one.
Okay.
He said that the liquor application for La Cabana has only had one violation a couple of years ago for service to a minor. According to OLCC, that's not grounds to deny them applying for their permit. And so he would have us approve it.
This is
Okay.
Councilor Wagner, and unless there's discussion, I would like to wholeheartedly move to approve this and ask them to please hurry up. Because I missed their food.
Okay, motion's been made to accept the liquor license application. Is there a second?
Can we have discussion on it?
Yeah, certainly. Go ahead, Councilor McNair.
Okay. Josette, in the last council, I think we had issues concerning serving alcohol on the sidewalks where they had out. And so, are you familiar with the outcome of that?
No, that was under the past mayor, who also had tables on the sidewalk.
Right.
So it never really got addressed. But we can easily remind them that their OLCC permit, unless they can't, because they're responsible for the middle of the sidewalk, but the sidewalk's public. So they couldn't include it in their OLCC permit. So they just need to serve alcoholic drinks inside.
Okay, that answers the question that I have.
Okay, there has been a motion made to accept the application, the liquor license application. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, a second's been made. Thank you. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Councilor Wagner?
Aye.
Councilor Webb is absent. Mayor Hobart?
Aye.
Councilor McNair?
Aye.
Councilor Allen?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Staff report, virtual meetings.
Okay, this is a staff report that's brought to you by me. So I don't know if you guys want me to review it again, but I'm just forwarding information. I emailed it to you last week, but I wanted to let you know of the governor's new guidance for local governments. Essentially what this does is removes the maximum number of people that we can have at a meeting. So we don't have to limit those that attend. It's up to you guys if you want to still have virtual meetings or meet in person. We would still have to be 6 feet apart and have masks on. It would be up to the audience to decide how they would do that, if they're in the same group or if they're all need to be 6 feet apart. Reminder, we don't typically have a lot of audience members, but when there are more controversial items on the agenda, we do have a pretty good showing at our meetings. So I don't have a recommendation one way or the other.
Councilor Wagner.
So I have a couple of questions. Which phase is Columbia County in, and do our increasing number of cases potentially impede what's going on?
We
The
are
reason I
still in
asked you,
phase.
pardon, go ahead.
We are still in phase 2 in Columbia County, and from what I understand, they have not released any more guidance or any more strict guidance or requirements, whatever you want to call it, anymore, for counties that have increased numbers. I know they haven't for Multnomah or anywhere like that.
The reason I ask is Saturday I heard that there was a possibility that the county commissioners were going to have to talk to the governor regarding Columbia County status to see, because of our numbers increasing. So I wasn't sure if that was going to have any effect on this.
Not that they have notified us.
I personally prefer, at least for now, the Zoom meetings, particularly since we've just had a conversation at our last meeting about Chromebooks for everybody to be able to participate fully in these meetings.
Looks like Councilor McNair is trying to say something.
Oh, I was quiet actually for now.
Oh,
I was waiting to hear what JR had to say. Or you, Mayor.
I'll chime in.
go ahead, JR.
Yeah, I don't like the optics of this, the government making special rules for themselves, being above the people. So I'm just not comfortable with that kind of situation. If it's good for everybody, it's good for us.
Isn't it that there's an exception for government, not the other way around?
That's what I'm saying. Why should government get special rules?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't sure which way you were referring to it.
You know, you got people telling you how to run your life and do this and do that, and then they make special rules for themselves. Like, that just doesn't cut it for me. So I guess I'm saying I'm good with the way it is for now.
Councilor McNair.
Well, you know my feelings.
Yeah.
I've made them clear. I prefer the meeting in person, but it would appear, even if you were to agree with me, Mayor, then it would be a tie vote. So I suppose it's up to you.
Well, I don't really care one way or the other, but I'm going to go follow the other two counselors that think it'd be best if we stick virtually for a little bit longer, and so that's the direction I'm going. I'm kind of getting used to these Zoom meetings actually, but I do agree with you, Councilor McNair, that I think we're more effective in person, but that's the way I tend to go tonight. So
Yeah, it's just a personal preference. I don't
I
view it as government having one way or the other. I guess I never thought of it that way. Something to think about.
sure.
I just prefer meeting in person. It seems to be more effective, like you said. So
I did talk to Stephanie earlier this week, or it might have been last week, and we were talking about the availability of Chromebooks, and they're very hard to come by anymore. In fact, the place she looked into to purchase them were completely out, and they're very hard to get right now. So that's another thing to think about too. But
We do have our computer guy on the hunt.
okay. So it looks like we're going to keep our meetings virtually until further notice. So, okay. Okay. Next staff report, waiver of remonstrance application.
Okay, so I sent you guys this one. Planning Commission's working on some tweaks and changes, but in the wee deep parts of Title IX, it says that someone will have to petition the city, mainly the Public Works Director, which we don't legitimately actually have someone that carries the title of Director. Jeff is the Public Works Foreman, and myself, and they have to petition us and then fall into the criteria that's listed in Title IX. And there's some tweaks with that. It doesn't, we want Planning Commission to look at what form and information do they exactly have to submit to petition, because that's not outlined in there. And then it also states that it needs to be confirmed by City Council. And we've slowly, as staff, started making kind of policies and procedures so that City Council doesn't have to be burdened with every waiver of remonstrance, similar to how we took away the water leak requirement for every water leak to come before you guys. So we're asking Planning Commission to amend the code, which will come before you for approval anyway, but to remove that burden from City Council as long as someone meets the criteria. So I'm presenting you tonight with a petition from Brandon Rabesh and Fabian Tournet. They are building a house on Louisiana, near but away from their current home, a bigger home. And there's no, as you can see from the map that I also sent with their letter, there's not any infrastructure there as far as sidewalks or even more than a gravel road is there. And so they're petitioning to get a waiver of remonstrance to be required to participate at a later date when there are sidewalks And as I stated in my staff report, the petition runs with the land, not the person. So the property would have to participate in an improvement district, or if the city was coming in at a later date and doing the road, they'd have to put in the sidewalks at that time. Are there any questions?
I do. I have one.
Go ahead, Councilor McNair.
Can you, Josette, just haphazard a guess how many more properties before we do the Louisiana?
Not really, Bruce. You mean before we pave Louisiana?
Well, we have to realign it and pave it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we just have to realign the section south of the cross street F, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Get it back in the right-of-way platted there.
Right.
So you're just talking about redoing that part and punching it through from gravel to concrete, or actually paving?
Well, even just the realignment and graveling it would at least try to take some of the stress off of Mellinger Road. But ultimately it would be paving and doing the street improvements.
So ultimately, I'd say the punch through is a way more realistic thing that could happen in the next 18 months if council so choose to put some of our street capacity money in there, or streets money in there. The paving is a different monster altogether, because it ultimately in this
requires sidewalks.
Sorry?
Would require curbs and sidewalks, or at least
right,
curbs.
And just the distance of it is, I'd hazard a guess at least $150,000 to pave it.
Right.
That distance and the width and everything. So the punching through, I think, is, some falling of trees and pit run and some grading and that kind of thing. I think if that was something that was really important to council, I think when the 10 homes that are slated to be built there by H Street, he's going to have to do punch in H Street and do the gravel and everything. But Louisiana, I think we could do that if that's something council wanted to do. Once those homes went in and thought, okay, enough of them are there that we think it needs to be punched through, then that could be a project to tackle.
One step at a time.
Yeah, it's hard with all these kind of undeveloped platted lots, because they don't fall in. I mean, that's another thing we were talking about with Matt, the planner, about code, is our code really doesn't speak to them the way it speaks to a subdivision or a partition.
Right.
So people can get away with, oh, well, I didn't subdivide the property, but I'm building this many homes. So all we can do is hold them to what code will let us hold them to until we change code. And maybe that's something the Planning Commission should really start addressing, and look how you could address it, have some line in the sand, and then undeveloped platted lots have to follow these, and make it another subject heading in the Title IX.
Mayor Hobart, if you'd indulge me, one more question.
Yes.
Josette, I know you've recently had conversation with one of the county commissioners about the Mellinger Road issue.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any speaking to any dust abatement on that road on their part?
So I've actually called the county on behalf of our citizens that are in the city limits but live on Mellinger. And the county's answer to that is, it's a county gravel road, and those homeowners can participate in a dust abatement program that they have that costs them so much per linear foot of their frontage, and there's a minimum. So it would behoove them to go together as neighbors and get the minimum met and then pay for their linear frontage of their property. A lot of the homeowners don't want to do that because I think it ends up being like $450 per home. But that's really the county's answer, is they can participate in our dust abatement if they want to. But the county refused. I asked them to put a speed sign on that road, and they refused and said they do not put speed signs on gravel roads.
Okay. So
hands off.
So has any of this been communicated to those residents that were speaking to us about the issue?
Every one of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Every time they've called, I've told them the number they can call for land use and planning at roads department, and gave them all the same information. And they've also said to me, well, it's too cost prohibitive for me to do that every year. And kind of the downside of living on a county gravel road, I guess.
Well, I know that the realignment and construction of North Louisiana was high on the list with the Public Works when I was liaison there, so I don't know what it is currently, but it's something to look into as we move forward.
Yeah, it wouldn't. I mean, staff could easily get an estimate for what the, some ballpark numbers for what that would cost. So when Public Works comes back on, they could discuss it again and potentially bring it to council and where we would find funds and all of that.
Thank you, Josette.
Any other discussion or questions?
I have a question, Mayor Hobart.
Go ahead, Councilor Allen.
Yeah, maybe Josette can answer this. It says in his report, the city planner and the planning commission is in the process of amending the code to clarify the criteria and remove the burden of city council to confirm each waiver applicant. Since I've been on council, I don't remember these applicants coming to council.
Right. So from when I started in this job, it had always been the process of a petition. When they did a building permit, I reviewed it and saw if they met the criteria, and then because I'm the signature on it, signed it. I did not study the code well enough to see that it said each one should be confirmed by the council. That's why I'm saying when you read the code, it doesn't stand out. So that's why we're bringing this one to you, because Matt and I just discussed, oh my gosh, it's supposed to be confirmed by the city council.
Right. Well, I get that, but I don't know why we find out something, so we change the rules so it doesn't have to happen in the future, when maybe council now and in the future could help alleviate some of these problems that we're starting to maybe see coming with this piecemeal stuff.
I'm not really following. What do you mean by the piecemeal stuff?
Yeah, like somebody moves in, they buy a piece of property, they build in the middle of nowhere, then they build another house next door, then they skip a lot, build a house, and nothing gets improved until much later down the road. Then you have the traffic issues, you have the dust issues, you have the runoff issues, and I'm not saying council would be able to solve all those, but maybe if another set of eyes and what's going on, being aware of what's going on would help. And I just don't see the need in taking away the council's powers.
So the interesting part about this, JR, is one of the options the council in the Title IX amendments, and this code gives a lot of power to council. Council can determine, hey, everybody on Beach Street, you're going to put in a sidewalk. you guys can just determine that and require people to come up to code. So the other option where staff's been, one of the reasons we brought this to you is because staff's been thinking, do we just say no to everyone, change the criteria that just says you put it in no matter what? Doesn't matter if it's a sidewalk to nowhere for 15 years, you're going to put it in. So that's also something that in the amendments could happen. So that's why we're bringing the amendments to you, regardless of what you do with this one petition, for a bigger discussion of that. Do we just start making everyone follow the code and we don't leave any criteria in there that has an out?
I agree there needs to be probably further discussion on this subject.
Yeah, so that's something planning's putting together, and it's probably going to be end of November, beginning December before the changes come to you. They have to have a few hearings and do some other things. But that was one thing staff talked about. Do we just rip off the Band-Aid and start requiring everyone from here on out to start putting in what's required? And eventually it will all meet. And
Right.
if people go in together and decide, hey, 8 of us on the street are going to do their sidewalks and get a better rate because it's now being required for all. So there's a lot of kind of discussion around what this section ultimately becomes in the amendment process. But one of the things that was weird that never has happened before today, in the time I've been here, and even when I was on council, was they were just checking that they met criteria. They were never bringing them to us. So that's why I wanted to kind of start with this first one, bring up to you guys that this section's proposed to be amended in some way, and then have you start thinking about, do you want to leave the criteria in and see all of them? Do you want to not have the burden and just have staff meet the criteria? Or do we want to say everyone meet code regardless? So it's kind of a beginner to a bigger discussion.
Has it ever came up where somebody builds a house and they get out of doing this because it's attached to the land? 10 years, 5 years later, they sell the house. Maybe the new owner and the realtor, maybe there's not a lot of talk about it. And then all of a sudden we say, hey, it's time to do it. And then there's a big uproar. Well, I didn't know, you know what I mean?
Well, it runs on the title report. So anybody doing their due diligence would see this recorded against the title. So it should never be a surprise. It's what you get from your realtor when you look at a piece of property. Any easements, any liens, any things that are attached to your property, you get that title report, and this would exist on that. It does exist where we've signed them with people before.
Okay, thank you.
Point of inquiry.
Yes.
Go ahead, Councilor McNair.
A question to Councilor Allen. Are you talking about, just for definition for me, a half-street improvement for each house, requiring that? I'm not against. I'm just trying to get a handle on what you're saying.
I'm not saying one way or another. I'm saying it sounds like council needs to have and planning commission, everybody needs to have a more thorough, in-depth look at how we're doing things in our city and how it's working.
Okay, but would you how would you envision that as opposed to what's going on now? Would you require, or Josette, in your explanation of things, would that require a half-street improvement?
Well, I'm not saying it one way.
Go ahead.
I wasn't saying one way or another, Councilor McNair. I was just bringing up the situation, and Joe said it made it clear it's attached to the deed.
Right. I just wanted to move on a little bit more, get it a little bit more in depth. You're thinking, both of you.
So currently, Bruce, they're required to put in the right-of-way full width to the gravel standard on these unimproved platted lots. We've had a few that have put in, you know, all of theirs on the side they're building on and hookups or lines going to the opposite side for future build out. This could be a person putting in the full road and requesting a reimbursement district from us. You know, so there's lots of versions of how it is. The minimum standard is the full width to the gravel spec in the transportation code. That's
Okay,
the minimum.
okay. All I was seeking was a little bit more detail on what we were thinking about talking about. So, anyhow.
Yeah, so they could get away with, if you guys chose, gravel full width build out and curb and gutter sidewalk just for their property. Currently, they can get full width gravel road spec and a waiver of remonstrance if they meet criteria. They have to participate when we come in and do the road or when we form a local improvement district, or they can just do it right away. But it's kind of, by the time that sidewalk ages, some people would rather do it this way, either because of the cost up front or because they think no one's going to build to them on either side for 12 years and then their sidewalk's going to be aging or shifting with the ground and not match up to their neighbors, or who knows what they think. But.
Well, I could see that was going through my mind, a bit of a piecemeal way of doing things. You know, when it's a subdivision, they do the whole thing. But this going in there and building one house at a time, like JR was talking, and you're not really seeing any infrastructure improvements. And it just creates problems. It was an issue that was brought to me by that county commissioner. He was concerned about that.
Yeah. So I talked to him about that, and he said that what St. Helens has done is they require, in addition to the home build, $30,000 of infrastructure improvements.
So they put a price tag.
They did.
Yeah.
So
something
that's
there
another way you could go. I mean,
something there.
a heck of a deal out here.
Yeah. Well, it's something there to think about for, you know, Dale's concerns. I know Dale has the same concerns. I'm sure both Susan and Rick do too. So, anyway.
I would
Well, and if you
like
punch
to speak for myself on that. Thank you.
And if you punched Louisiana through, and then you did like 2 consecutive years of small cities allotment grants, because that is an area that's close to the school, which is one of their criteria that they like, you know, pedestrian access to school.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say, we're doing these pavings in this section this year, you're putting in your sidewalks if you abut Louisiana, and the next section, you know, you're going to require it with every house because it's paved right up to it or whatever. So there is a lot of kind of variance on which way we can go, and we can totally rip off the Band-Aid, and if that's what council wants, staff will institute that.
I didn't hear Susan's remark there.
I would ask that the mayor make a statement regarding that, what you said, speaking for other counselors.
Oh, you don't, I shouldn't speak for other counselors?
You're asking me a question, Susan?
Yes, it's against council rules for a counselor to speak on behalf of other counselors. And I was just asking Councilor McNair, actually I was asking you, Mr. Mayor, to make the statement regarding that.
Oh, that Councilor McNair was speaking for me and you?
And Counselor Webb and Counselor Allen. Yes.
Well, with that said, I apologize, Susan. You're right.
Do you guys have other questions on this request?
I'm actually looking forward to seeing that come before council to discuss it with, with what planning comes up with.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to accept the waiver of remonstrance application?
This is Counselor Wagner. I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll make that second.
Second's been made. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Allen, Counselor Allen,
Aye.
Counselor McNair,
Aye.
Counselor Webb is absent, Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Counselor Wagner,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you. Moving on to letter E, and I didn't get a chance to write it down, the addition to the agenda, but
So this one's coming from me. I had Stephanie send it to you. We talked about it on Friday, and then both of us forgot to send it to you, so we apologize for that. This is just a license and maintenance agreement between Columbia County and the City of Vernonia for the placement of the temporary Connex box for PPE supplies and emergency management distribution of supplies for the next 2 years. I did send it to Ruben and have him review it. He has no concerns about it. We can ask them to remove it within, with a request if we do not want it on our property anymore. We will pay for the LED lighting and heat if it goes below like 45. There's like a little heater that kicks on. But when they did the poll from other cities, it was really minimal cost to have this opportunity to have our community basically have access to emergency management and their supplies. They're putting them in all the cities off the 30 corridor. So Clatskanie, Rainier, Columbia City, and Vernonia, and Scappoose and St. Helens already are right there in emergency management area. So I'm just asking for your guys' authorization for me to sign this agreement, and then we're going to do the preparation for the pad, juxtapose Susie a little bit forward and realign her electrical plug-in through a conduit underneath.
thank you, Josette. Any discussions on this? Would any counselor like to make a motion to allow staff to proceed with the emergency post down at the Mill Pond site?
Oh, go ahead.
I'd first like to ask the question of JR. I know he hasn't met with his committee, understandably so. Have you had any conversations with any of them about this issue or your feelings about it yourself, since you are the park liaison?
Councilor McNair, I haven't had a meeting with the Parks Committee.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, JR. I just recognized that. I just wondered if you'd, since you are the Parks liaison, I was kind of curious at what you had to think about this.
I know as much about it as you do.
Okay.
I really don't. We haven't talked about it except for staff has mentioned it once before and now tonight.
I think there was an issue about the cost of the electricity. Was that the question that was involved, Mayor?
I can't remember if that was an issue or not. I think Josette just mentioned something about the underground conduit. I'm not sure exactly if the county was going to pick up that fee or I know there's no meter for that sole service, so it would be hooked in our meter. Is that correct, Josette?
Yeah, and it's just for the LED lighting and heating when it goes, only if there's materials in there that need to be protected against going below freezing. If it's masks and stuff, they're not set. It would be if they were doing a vaccine dispersal or something like that that needed heating.
Mayor Hobart.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councilor Allen.
I guess my question and concerns about this, Josette, would be, you talking one Connex or two Connexes?
One Connex.
Okay, and how are they anchoring it so it don't float away in a flood event?
Well, the floodwaters don't get to the spot that we chose behind Susie. That's one of the reasons it was picked, is it had good public access if it was going to be a distribution site, and it was out of the floodplain.
So that lake was never blocked off because that house down in the hole was completely filled full of water. Maybe the driveway was still okay, the lake.
Yeah, so the house in that triangle,
right,
did have water, but the water never got near the bank adjacent to the lake, if that makes sense. The grade of the ground is for it to fall more towards Riverside and the tree streets than it would be it would be biblical if it got up over the bank where the RV sits. It would be a way bigger flood.
Okay. Has Parks Committee been advised of any of this?
No, they have not.
Okay, that would answer the question for Mr. McNair if I had any discussion with him about it. Thank you, Josette.
Uh-huh.
This is Councilor Wagner. I think it's great that we are being proactive, that the county is being proactive, and it may not be ideal, but it is certainly a lot better than being unprepared. And with that said, I'd like to move that we have the city administrator move forward with signing the license and maintenance agreement between Columbia County and the city of Vernonia for the Connex for emergency utilization.
Mayor Hobart.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor McNair.
I would ask that we be allowed to finish the discussion.
Yes. And Councilor Wagner, there was more discussion that wanted to be addressed. Could you hold off on your motion?
Of course. I'm sorry, I had no idea. Without having the visual cues of people raising their hands, it's difficult to know, because when there's a pause and nobody else is saying anything, I simply took that to mean that we were done.
Okay. Councilor McNair, further discussion.
Well, with that, it's understandable. We're all fallible. Anyway, so Josette, the Connex is going to store, like you said, face masks and things of that nature.
Yeah, it's going to store any supplies that emergency management deems necessary to distribute in Vernonia. So if it's going to be, if we know there's a hurricane season coming and there's potential for flood, it may store flood-related things, it may store virus-related things. It's going to be whatever they get from the federal government, our share of it stored in a Connex in Vernonia.
So all those items are subject to deterioration in the winter months in a unheated Connex, right? Correct?
Well, that's the thing. The heat will be on if it's something that needs to be heated in order to remain effective. That's what I said.
Yeah. So there is going to be some electricity cost to the parks. How are we going to do that on parks, or who's going to bear that burden?
Probably the general fund will look at what the discrepancy is from last year at the Parco site in that month and pull that and pay with the general fund.
Okay. Because parks does.
From what the other places have experienced, it's going to be minimal expense as far as electricity pull goes for how much they have it on and how much they're quote unquote using it, opening it and turning on the lights, and the heat isn't going to need to keep it at, some crazy temperature for like someone living in there. So it's really just going to be knock the edge off, basically.
Well, we're not. We're subject to a different cost than the rest of the county is through Western Electric. So, I caution minimizing the effect, and especially on the parks, which has very little money to spare. So,
but it wouldn't be paid for by parks.
That's the answer I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Joseph?
Now, I'm done now, Mayor. You can move ahead.
Okay, Councilor McNair. Go ahead, Councilor Allen.
Just one note on Connexes. I have extensive, experience with Connexes since I work with them every day of my life. Some Connexes seem to do fairly well with sweating, and some Connexes sweat like crazy if they're not heated clear even into the mid-spring. So you could plan on perhaps running a heater for 6 months of the year.
Okay.
And that was my fear too, JR. But it sounds like we're going to put it in the appropriate area of the budget.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Would you like to move forward with your motion now, Councilor Wagner?
I restate my motion to, that we authorize the city administrator to move forward with the license and maintenance agreement between Columbia County and the city of Vernonia for the Connex, which will contain emergency supplies.
Is there a second?
Well, I'll be willing to make that second.
Thank you, Councilor McNair. And second's been made. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Councilor Webb?
He's hunting.
Webb is absent. Councilor McNair?
Aye.
Mayor Hobart?
Aye.
Councilor Allen?
Aye.
Councilor Wagner?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. Are there any business from the departments? No, okay. Ordinances and resolutions. Resolution 2020-12, adopting master fee schedule. Pages 18 through 23.
This resolution is brought to you by me. As you guys were already presented, there's addition of cemetery fees. Those were amended. And then there's a few other changes, which I will tell you what those are now. So in the description for park fees, annual park pass, we added that passes are half price after July 1st. This has always been that passes were half price after July 1st. They just weren't put, it wasn't put in the master fee schedule. So we added that so that it was in writing. And then if you go down to utility billing fees towards the end, bulk water is $1.25 per 50 gallons. Again, this is a fee that has always been charged. It is not changed. It just, for some reason, wasn't put in the master fee schedule ever. And then down in planning fees, this is new home building application deposit. This is something that's being brought to you by staff in conjunction with the planning department and the building inspectors and our the company that we contract with. This is coming because we want to assure that costs for staff time are received on initial application from applicants. Sometimes there have been instances where people have applied for a building permit. Staff spends a significant amount of time, whether it be planning or inspection. Engineer, it hasn't been an issue yet, but it could be. And they never end up purchasing the permit. So then it expires. Maybe they reapply and we go through the process all over again. And the citizens are footing that cost for them to essentially what do I want to say? Use up staff time, accrue costs. So staff is proposing a new home building application deposit of $1,000. This deposit will be applied to final permit costs. It will be divided between building, planning, engineering, or administrative fees are all included in that. So just for reference, planning base deposit is $300. There's 3 different permits that are required for engineering now. Each one is $200, so you're up to $600 there. And if you add in planning, that's $900. So it really isn't, it doesn't even cover building, but it's a nice round number. And it would be assuring that we're covering our bases before staff spends a significant amount of time on permits. And then,
Beth, can I say something?
yeah.
And if they have a very simple plan and they're building a lot that's got everything right up to it, whatever is not a required permit fee would be applied to their balance, correct?
Correct. So demolition permit is also in there. This used to be a requirement from the building department, but it is no longer required by state code for them to apply for a demo permit. But it is handy for staff to have those permit applications and for the county tax assessors. So we want to continue to charge that $40 flat fee for somebody to get a permit. It triggers us to go remove the water meter and make sure that everything's taken care of at the site, and then also to notify the tax assessors that that is no longer on their tax roll. Cemetery fees, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie and Josette. Any discussion on the master fees? Questions?
I have none, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Would anyone like to make a motion to accept the resolution 2020-12, adopting the master fee schedule?
I'll do that, Mayor.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Counselor Wagner. Call the roll, please, Stephanie.
Okay, Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Counselor Webb is absent, Counselor Wagner,
Aye.
Counselor McNair,
Aye.
Counselor Allen, Counselor Allen,
No.
motion carried.
Okay, thank you. No correspondence tonight.
Mayor,
Yes.
I had some difficulty hearing. What was the conclusion of that vote?
Motion was carried with only one counselor against.
Motion carried.
So it was unanimous.
No, Counselor Allen
No.
voted against it.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Counselor Webb wasn't there. All right. Thank you.
So there's no correspondence? Nope. So we're ready for a city administrator report. Josette.
Can I ask a question? In your council rules, does the counselor have the right to, if he wants to, record why he voted no? Is that Counselor Allen, are you interested in recording for the minutes why you voted no or not?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll move on to my city administrator's report. We applied for the LOC award. Everyone's home, so there were tons of applicants, and we did not get awarded the award. So she said she'll send us the list once the awarded cities are notified. She said, "Great job on your project. Sorry it wasn't awarded." We did also receive email correspondence from Mark Cowan at OPRD, and I just cut and paste what he exactly said about the local grant for the skate park that we applied for. So we're kind of just still in limbo. When they tell us they're prepared for a Zoom presentation or an in-person presentation, we are also ready. Wendy Sears and I have been working on the PowerPoint and have it all dialed in, so we're ready to go once they see the winter lottery forecast and determine if they can distribute funds to the applicants that they're going to award this year. The CARES Act funding, we're still working on compiling the costs for the different settings that we're going to be putting these items in. So our goal is to have that to council at the next meeting if I can get all of the numbers back and kind of estimates back for different scenarios. And I apologize for the short report, but I was out the week before, so I only had 1 week of things going on and not a ton other. But if there's questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Josette. Any questions for the city administrator?
I forgot what the LGGP means.
Local Government Grant Program.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other discussion? Okay, thank you, Josette. Any other items from the counselors? I have one comment. Thank you to the Mitchells and Sean Gibson for putting on a wonderful salmon festival and all those involved. And Bruce helped down at the fish pond all day, and it was good to see people out and about and enjoying the sunshine in each other's company. And I think it was a pretty successful salmon festival. So thank you.
Well, thanks to the Lions for being our food booth.
Yeah.
Oh, I have
Thanks.
one comment on that too, Mayor, when you get a chance.
Yeah, go ahead, Counselor.
I wanted to mention your grandson for saving the day on the keeping the fish in the pool.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe
he
you could
just
tell everybody what happened.
yeah, he just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and it was mid-afternoon, and unfortunately the drain plug popped out again, and we had some issues with it last year trying to get it to hold, and anyway, he brought it to my wife's attention, and she called me, and I was able to get a hold of Josette right away, and they got right on it, and the city crew fixed it. So, yeah, about half the water drained out of that little wading pool. So, but
Even
other
for
than
the
that,
rest,
it went pretty good, and I think everyone had a good time, and it's a lot of work. I slept good that night, Saturday night for sure. But any other discussions from the council? Okay, if
Mayor?
not, yes, go ahead.
I'd just like to thank you. I'd just like to thank you for the recognition. I too slept all night, a good night too. Next day my back was sore, but it was it's always a lot of fun down there working with the kids and the families that come down there to fish. And this year we had some big fish, and boy, they were, kids were pretty excited. They did really well. So, I agree with you on everything you spoke about, all the individuals, but I'd personally like to thank you for mentioning me.
You're welcome, Counselor.
Yeah, Bruce, I'd like to thank you too. You're doing it every year. It's really great.
Well, JR, I missed last year. So, with Dale gone, Dale normally, he is a big help down there. We probably wouldn't have had the issue if he'd been there, but we managed to muck our way through it. Casey he's right on top of all that stuff. So next year will be just even that much better. So thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready for action item summary, Josette.
okay. So I have that staff's going to get the detailed prescription for the trimming of the walnut tree and obtain bids for cost approval at our next meeting. We're also going to obtain the value of the walnut limb that we're planning on selling to offset some of the costs, and have that information all for the next meeting. Staff's going to start working on kind of ballparking the North Louisiana punch through kind of cost, different categories of cost, from falling trees to pit run to surveying, whatever cost would be incurred, and kind of get that ball rolling so that when Public Works Committee comes back online with meetings, they can bat that around and potentially petition council to make that a project. Staff's going to sign the waiver of remonstrance for Mr. Rubesh and Ms. Tournay, and staff's going to execute the agreement with emergency management and start preparing the Connex site.
Okay, thank you, Josette. If there's no other discussion, I will adjourn this council meeting at 8:50 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Good night, all.
Night.
Hey, before you get off the deal there,